The giant space station Harmony Prime floated in the darkness between stars. Its metal walls stretched for miles in every direction. Millions of beings from across the galaxy lived and worked inside its corridors. Today, those corridors buzzed. With nervous energy, Ambassador John Carter walked through the diplomatic wing with steady steps. His black suit was perfectly pressed. His gray hair was neatly combed. Behind him, 6 other humans followed in a straight line. They wore the same dark suits and carried themselves with quiet dignity. Captain Lisa Morgan brought up the rear of the group. Her hand rested on her weapon, but her face stayed calm. She had been protecting human diplomats for 3 years now. In all that time, she had never seen Ambassador Carter look this determined. The group reached the massive doors of the council chamber. 2 alien guards stood on either side. They were tall, with blue skin and 4 arms each. They looked down at the humans with barely hidden disgust. "The council will see you now," one guard said in broken English. His voice carried the tone of someone speaking to children. The doors opened with a deep, grinding sound. The council chamber was enormous. 100 different alien species sat in curved rows that rose up like a theater. At the center, 5 beings sat on elevated thrones. These were the council leaders, the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Ambassador Carter led his team to the small platform in the middle of the chamber. The humans stood in a perfect line, their hands at their sides. Every eye in the room was on them. Counselor Zethkar of the Vrex Empire stood up from his throne. His species looked like giant lizards with too many teeth. His scales were dark green, and his eyes glowed yellow in the dim light. "Humans," Zethkar said, his voice echoing through the chamber, "you have come before this council for 3 years. You have asked to join our great civilization. You have claimed that your species deserves a place among us." The alien leader paused and looked around the chamber. Many of the other aliens nodded their agreement. "But we have watched your kind. We have studied your history. We have seen your wars, your violence, your primitive ways. You are not ready for the responsibilities that come with council membership." A tall, thin alien with silver skin stood up in the gallery. "The humans cannot even control their own planet properly," she said. "How can they help govern the galaxy?" Another alien, this one covered in fur with 6 legs, joined in. "Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. They still use chemical rockets to reach space. It is embarrassing." The comments continued for several minutes. Each alien speaker found new ways to insult humanity. They called humans savage, backward, and unworthy. Through it all, Ambassador Carter and his team stood perfectly still. Their faces showed no emotion. Finally, Counselor Zethkar raised one of his clawed hands for silence. "The council has made its decision. Humanity will be granted limited membership status. You will be allowed to colonize 3 solar systems. No more. You will pay tribute to the council every year. You will follow all council laws without question. We will have no vote in council decisions." The chamber fell silent. This was not membership at all. It was slavery with a fancy name. Zethkar smiled, showing all of his sharp teeth. "This is generous, considering your species' many failings. You should be grateful that we are willing to guide you at all." Ambassador Carter took a step forward. His voice was calm and clear when he spoke. "May I respond to the council's offer?" "You may," Zethkar said with a wave of his hand. Carter looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of aliens who had just spent an hour insulting his species. 3 years ago, Earth sent me here with a simple mission. We wanted to join the Galactic community as equals. We wanted to share our knowledge and learn from others, wanted to build a better future for all species. The ambassador paused and straightened his shoulders. We offered our friendship freely, we shared our art, our music, our literature. We showed you our medical advances, our engineering solutions, our agricultural techniques. We asked for nothing in return except respect. Some of the aliens in the chamber began to look uncomfortable. They remembered the gifts humanity had brought, the beautiful paintings, the moving music, the life-saving medicines. But respect is not something you can demand, Carter continued. It must be earned, and it must be given freely. Today, I have learned that this council does not respect humanity. You see us as children to be managed, not as partners to work with. Zethkar's eyes narrowed. You will accept our generous offer? Human. No species has ever been given such favorable terms. Carter shook his head slowly. I'm afraid I cannot accept your offer, Counselor. A gasp went through the chamber. No one had ever refused a council decision before. The United Earth. Government has authorized me to make this statement, Carter said, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive room. We came here seeking partnership. Instead, we found condescension and chains disguised as friendship. The human ambassador reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. He pressed a button, and his voice was suddenly broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from all negotiations with the Galactic Council. We will no longer seek your approval for our actions. We'll no longer accept your judgment of our worth. We'll chart our own course among the stars. The chamber erupted in chaos. Aliens jumped to their feet, shouting in dozens of different languages. Some looked angry, others confused, and a few appeared frightened. Carter raised his voice above the noise. What? We leave behind our gifts as a reminder of what could have been. Perhaps one day, when you are ready to treat us as equals, we can meet again as friends. The human delegation turned and walked toward the exit. Their steps were measured and calm, despite the shouting behind them. Captain Morgan glanced back at the chaos they were leaving behind. Counselor Zethkar was screaming orders in his native language. Other council members were arguing among themselves. The carefully controlled meeting had become a disaster as they reached the doors. Ambassador Carter stopped and turned back one final time. One last thing, he called out, his voice cutting through the noise. Humanity has never asked permission to exist. We will not start now. The doors closed behind them with a final boom. In the corridor outside, the human delegation walked in silence for several minutes. Finally, Captain Morgan spoke. Sir, what happens now? Ambassador Carter allowed himself a small smile. Now, Captain, we show them what humanity is really capable of. We've been playing by their rules for 3 years. It's time to play by ours. Behind them, the shouting in the council chamber continued. For the first time in over 1,000 years, the Galactic Council faced a crisis they did not know how to handle. A species had walked away from their authority, and they had no idea what to do about it. The humans had come to the council as supplicants, seeking acceptance. They were leaving as something far more dangerous. They were leaving as free beings, who would no longer be told what they could or could not do. The galaxy was about to change. The council was beginning to realize they might not like what came next in the depths of space. Human colony ships that had been waiting for this moment began to move. The real expansion of humanity was about to begin. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours, every major world knew what had happened in the council chamber. The humans had walked away. No species had ever done that before. On the Vrex homeworld, Counselor Zethkar paced back and forth in his private chambers. His claws scraped against the metal floor with each step. He had ruled for 200 years, but he had never faced anything like this. How dare they, he growled to his aide. No primitive species walks away from the council. We are the power in this galaxy. His aide, a smaller Vrex named Korth, shifted nervously. Sir, perhaps we should consider their response. Zethkar spun around, his yellow eyes blazing, sure of themselves. They are nothing but a young species with barely a dozen worlds. They have no real military. Their technology is centuries behind ours. What can they possibly do? Some were also beginning to feel something they had not experienced in a very long time. Fear. Intelligence Director Vorthal of the Kalani species called an emergency meeting. The Kalani looked like tall, thin humans, but with pale blue skin and large black eyes. They were known throughout the galaxy for their skill at gathering information. Vorthal stood before a room full of military officers and government officials. Behind him, a massive screen showed star charts and data reports. Fellow beings, Vorthal began, his voice calm but serious. We have a problem. Our intelligence about the humans was wrong. Very wrong. A general in the back row stood up.
What do you mean wrong?
We have been watching them for 3 years. Vorthal pressed a button, and the screen changed to show human colony locations. Red dots appeared across the galaxy. There were far more than anyone expected. "We thought the humans had 15 colonies," Vorthal said. "The real number is 63. They have been expanding in secret while they talk to us." The room erupted in surprised voices. Vorthal raised his hand for quiet. "It gets worse. Our economic analysts have been studying human industrial output. They are producing goods at a rate that should be impossible for such a young civilization. Their manufacturing capacity is 4 times larger than our estimates." Another dot appeared. On the screen, this one in a sector that was supposed to be empty. "And this morning, our scouts reported human ships in the outer rim. That area is thousands of light years from Earth. It should have taken them decades to reach it. How is that possible? Their ships are not that fast." "That is what we thought," Vorthal replied. "But our assumptions were based on the ships they showed us. We now believe they have much better technology than they revealed." The meeting continued for hours. Each new piece of information painted a more disturbing picture. The humans had been playing a game while the council thought they were begging for acceptance. Back on Harmony Prime, Dr. Sarah Mitchell sat in her small laboratory. She was one of the few humans who had stayed behind after the diplomatic mission ended. As a scientist studying alien biology, her work was too important to abandon. But now she found herself in an unusual position. The aliens who had ignored her for 3 years suddenly wanted to talk to her. Her laboratory door chimed, and 3 different aliens entered. There was Healer Morden from the Ashanti, a peaceful species with golden fur and kind eyes. Next to him stood Professor Klix from the Zentari, a race of beings that looked like walking crystals. The third visitor was Captain Veltar of the Rogani, a species of blue-skinned warriors. Dr. Mitchell Healer Morden said gently, "We need to ask you some questions about your people." Sarah looked up from her microscope. "I suppose you want to know why we left." "We want to understand," Professor Klix said, his crystal body ringing like a bell when he spoke. "Your species seemed to want council membership very badly. Why walk away when you were offered limited status?" Sarah put down her tools and faced her visitors, because limited status was not membership. It was control. "You are asking us to give up our freedom in exchange for your approval." Captain Veltar stepped forward. His warrior culture respected strength, but he was confused by what he had seen. "Most species would have accepted any offer rather than risk our anger. That is the difference between us," Sarah said. "Humans do not fear rejection. We fear becoming something we are not supposed to be." The 3 aliens exchanged glances. This was not the answer they had expected. Dr. Mitchell Healer Morden said carefully, "We have been receiving reports about human activities across the galaxy. New colonies, trade routes, even contact with species that are not part of the council. How long has this been happening?" "We have been building relationships with independent species for 2 years. While your diplomats were telling us how primitive we were, our traders were making friends with beings you had never even contacted." Professor Klix made a sound like breaking glass. "But why? Why continue expanding if you wanted to join the council?" "Because," Sarah said, "we never needed the council's permission to grow. We were offering you a chance to be part of our expansion, not asking for your approval." The aliens stared at her in silence. The idea that humanity had been offering them something, rather than seeking something from them, was shocking. Captain Veltar was the first to speak. "You mean this was all a test? To see if we would accept you as equals?" "Not a test," Sarah corrected. "An opportunity. We hoped the council would see the wisdom in partnership." "And now?" Healer Morden asked. Sarah turned back to her microscope. "Now we will build our own path. The galaxy is large enough for everyone." Meanwhile, on Earth, President Andrew Baker stood in the war room, deep beneath the capital city. Around him, his top advisors and military leaders watched screens showing the galaxy-wide reaction to humanity's withdrawal. "Status report," Baker said calmly. Admiral Kate Sullivan stepped forward. She was a woman in her 50s, with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes. "Operation New Horizon is ready to begin, sir. 60 colony ships are prepared to launch. Each one carries 50,000 volunteers and enough supplies to establish a new world." "Resistance?" Baker asked. "Minimal. The council species are still trying to understand what happened. They are holding emergency meetings but taking no action. We have a window of opportunity. General Frank Morrison, head of Earth's military forces, added his report. Our defensive positions are solid if any council species decides to attack. We can hold them off long enough for the colonies to establish themselves. Baker nodded. And our new friends? 17 independent species have already contacted us, Admiral Sullivan replied. They want to establish trade relationships. Apparently word has spread that we offer fair deals without the Council's complicated rules. The president looked at the star chart on the main screen. Red dots showed human colonies, while blue dots marked friendly species. The pattern was clear. Humanity was not alone in wanting freedom from Council control. Gentlemen, ladies, Baker said, we are about to change the galaxy. Not through conquest or threats, but by showing other species that there is a better way. Give the order. Operation New Horizon begins now. Across the galaxy, the Council was learning a hard truth. Power built on fear and control was fragile. When someone refused to be afraid, that power began to crumble. The humans had not just walked away from the Council. They had walked towards something better. They were not walking alone. The colony ship New Dawn cut through space like a silver arrow. Its engines burned bright blue against the darkness. Inside, 50,000 humans slept in suspended animation pods, dreaming of new worlds and fresh starts. Commander Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge, watching the stars ahead. He was a tall man with brown hair and steady hands. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. They had been traveling for 3 weeks since leaving Earth, and their destination was finally in sight. "Sir," called Lieutenant Amy Foster from the navigation station. "The Kepler system is coming into view." Ryan looked at the main screen as a yellow star appeared in the distance. 3 planets orbited around it. The middle planet was green and blue, covered in oceans and forests. It was perfect for human life. "Begin landing procedures," Ryan ordered. "Wake the colonists. Today we build our first independent world." The New Dawn was not alone. Across the galaxy, 59 other colony ships were arriving at new worlds. Each ship carried the dreams of humanity. Each ship carried the promise of freedom. As the colonists began to wake up, something unexpected happened. Ships appeared around the New Dawn, but these were not Council vessels coming to stop them. These were traders from species that had never been part of the Galactic government. The first ship to make contact was called the Star Merchant. Its captain was a being named Trix from the Coterie species. The Coterie looked like large insects with 6 arms and shiny green shells. They were known across the galaxy as honest traders. "Human ship," came Trix's voice over the radio. "We welcome you to the Kepler system. We have been waiting for you to arrive." Ryan was surprised, "Waiting for us? How did you know we were coming?" "Word travels fast among the free traders," Trix replied. "We heard that humans offer fair prices and honest deals. We would like to trade with you." Within hours, more ships arrived. The Nalari brought rare metals from their asteroid mines. The Polton offered exotic foods from their jungle worlds. The Hector brought advanced medical supplies. All of them wanted to trade with the humans. Ryan realized something important was happening. These species had been ignored by the Council for centuries. They lived on the edges of galactic society, trading among themselves and staying out of the way of the big powers. But they had been watching humanity, and they liked what they saw. "Open the cargo bay," Ryan told his crew. "Let's show them what we brought." The human colony ship carried more than just people and supplies. It carried art, music, literature, and most importantly, manufacturing equipment. Within days of landing, humans had set up a trading post that could produce goods these species had never seen before. The Kodari were amazed by human electronics. Their own technology was good, but human devices were smaller, more efficient, and lasted longer. The Nalari loved human music. They'd never heard anything like it before. The Polton were fascinated by human medicines that could cure diseases their own doctors could not treat, but the most important thing the humans offered was respect. They treated every species as equals. They learned alien languages, studied alien cultures. They asked questions and listened to the answers. Meanwhile, On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was making a discovery that would change everything. She was an archaeologist who specialized in ancient civilizations. Her team had landed on a dead world in the Vega system, following radio signals that seemed to come from nowhere. Dr. Rodriguez called her assistant, a young woman named Beth. "Clark, you need to see this." Elena climbed down into the excavation site. What she saw took her breath away. Ancient buildings stretched out before her, made from materials she had never seen before. The architecture was beautiful, but alien, with curved walls and impossible angles. "How old is this?" Elena asked. "Our tests say at least 50,000 years, Beth replied, "but that's impossible. The council says no advanced civilization existed before them." Elena walked deeper into the ruins. Strange symbols covered the walls. They looked almost familiar, but she could not place them. In the center of the main building, they found something that made her heart race. It was a library. Thousands of data crystals lined the walls, each one containing information about the ancient civilization. But when Elena's team tried to access them, they discovered something shocking. The language was similar to ancient human languages. "This can't be right," Elena whispered. "These writings look like they could be related to Sanskrit or maybe ancient Egyptian." Her team worked day and night to translate the crystals. What they found was incredible. Ancient civilization called themselves the first builders. They had spread across the galaxy long before any current species existed. They built great cities, developed amazing technology, and explored every corner of space. But something had happened to them. The records spoke of a great catastrophe that forced them to abandon their worlds. Some of the first builders had fled to distant planets to wait until it was safe to return. The last entry in their records was a promise. One day their children would come back to reclaim their heritage. Elena stared at the final translation. With wide eyes, the description of the first builders matched human biology perfectly. Their height, their build, even their genetic markers. It was impossible to deny. Humans were not newcomers to the galaxy. They were the descendants of its first masters. Back in council space, the panic was getting worse. 3 minor species had formally requested to leave the council's protection. They wanted to join the growing alliance of independent worlds that was forming around humanity. The Mendi were a race of peaceful farmers who had been forced to give most of their crops to the council as tribute. They heard that humans would trade fairly for food and asked to join the human alliance. The Corvel were skilled, as engineers who had been forbidden from developing new technology without council approval. They wanted to work with humans who encouraged innovation and creativity. The Yith were explorers who had been restricted to their home system for decades. They longed to see the stars again and asked humanity for help. Each request was like a knife in the council's heart. For 1,000 years, no species had ever wanted to leave. Now, 3 had asked to go in a single week. Councillor Zethkar called another emergency meeting. The council chamber was half empty. Many species had sent representatives home to deal with problems in their own territories. "This cannot continue," Zethkar declared. "The humans are destroying everything we have built. They are turning our subjects against us." "Perhaps," said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber, "we should ask ourselves why our subjects want to leave." The speaker was Councillor Miratel of the Ashanti. She was one of the few council members who had always treated other species with kindness. Her golden fur was streaked with silver, showing her age and wisdom. "The humans offered us partnership," she continued. "We offered them slavery. Which would you choose?" Zethkar's eyes blazed with anger. "We offered them guidance, structure, order." "We offered them chains," Miratel replied calmly. "Beautiful chains, perhaps, but chains nonetheless. And now they have shown the galaxy that chains can be broken." The argument that followed lasted for hours. Some council members wanted to attack the human colonies. Others wanted to try to negotiate. Few like Miratel suggested that the council needed to change its ways. But while they argued, the galaxy was changing around them. Human colonies were thriving. Independent species were joining the human alliance. Trade routes that had existed for centuries were being abandoned. Merchants chose human ports over council stations. Commander Brooks stood on the observation deck of his new space station and watched ships come and go. In just 1 month, the Kepler's system had become one of the busiest trading hubs in the galaxy, and it was only the beginning. Ah, sir, Lieutenant Foster said, joining him at the window. We just received a message from Earth. 60 more colony ships are being prepared for launch. Ryan smiled. Good, we're going to need them. Outside, a coterie merchant ship docked next to a Nalari exploration vessel. The galaxy was learning too. Work together without the Council's permission. That, Ryan realized, was the most dangerous thing of all for the Old Order. The Vrex battle fleet moved through space like a pack of metal wolves. 20 warships surrounded 5 human cargo vessels that were carrying medical supplies to the independent world of Kepler Prime. Admiral Gorkstel, the fleet commander, was sure this would be an easy victory. Human ships. His voice boomed across the communication channels. You are illegally operating in Vrex territory. Surrender immediately, or we will destroy you. Captain Steve Parker stood on the bridge of the escort frigate Liberty Bell. He was a calm man with gray eyes and steady hands. Around him, his crew waited for orders. They were outnumbered 4-1, but none of them looked worried. Vrex fleet, Steve replied calmly. These are free trade routes established by treaty with independent worlds. You have no authority here. Admiral Gorkstel laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Authority? We are the Vrex Empire? Our authority comes from our guns. You will surrender or die. Steve looked at his tactical officer, Lieutenant Dan Cooper. Many crew members are on those Vrex ships. About 2,000 total, sir, Dan replied. Any escape pods ready? All ships show. Full escape pod capacity, sir. Steve nodded. Very well. Commence Operation Mercy. What happened next confused every military analyst who later studied the battle records. The human ships did not try to run. They did not fire their weapons. Instead, they did something the Vrex had never seen before. The Liberty Bell and her sister ships began moving in complex patterns around the Vrex fleet. They used precise energy bursts to disable engines, communications, and life support systems. But they never aimed at crew areas. They never tried to kill anyone. Within 10 minutes, the entire VX fleet was helpless. Their ships drifted in space, powerless and silent. Vrex fleet, Steve called over the radio. Your ships are disabled, but your crews are safe. We are sending rescue ships to assist you. Human medical ships appeared as if from nowhere. They began docking with the Vrex vessels and providing aid to the confused alien crews. Human doctors treated injured Vrex soldiers. Human engineers fixed life support systems. Human cooks prepared hot meals for hungry aliens. Admiral Gorkstel sat in his command chair, staring at the humans who were repairing his ship. He had come here to destroy them. Instead, they were saving his life. Why? He asked the human doctor who was treating a cut on his arm. Dr. Lisa Hayes looked up from her work. Because you are alive, she said simply. All life has value. Even the life of someone who tried to kill us. The doctor finished bandaging his wound and moved on to help another Vrex soldier. Gorkstal sat alone, trying to understand what had happened. In all his years of war, he had never met an enemy who fought to save lives instead of take them. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. The Council military leaders were terrified. How do you fight an enemy who turns your defeats into their victories? How do you conquer people who rescue their attackers? On the Council world of Zentara, Professor Klix called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Military Council. The crystal being's body rang like a bell as he spoke to the assembled officers. Fellow warriors, he said, we face an enemy unlike any we have ever known. They do not fight to destroy, they fight to convert. Every battle with them creates more allies for their cause. General Thorks of the Kalani stood up. What do you mean convert? Admiral Gorkstel has requested a meeting with human representatives, Professor Klix replied. Half of his crew wants to join the Human Alliance. Have been treating Vrex prisoners better than the Vrex Empire treats its own soldiers. The room fell silent. The implications were terrifying. If humanity could turn enemy soldiers into allies simply by showing them kindness, how could they be stopped? Meanwhile, on the independent station Liberty Point, Ambassador John Carter was having the busiest week of his career. Representatives from 12 different species had requested meetings. All of them wanted to join the Independent Systems Alliance. The alliance had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What started as a simple trade agreement between humans and a few independent worlds had become a new form of government. Species joined voluntarily. They kept their own cultures and laws. They worked together on projects that benefited everyone. Carter sat in his office, reviewing the latest membership request. The Torvan Republic wanted to join the alliance. They were offering their entire fleet of exploration ships in exchange for human medical technology and educational programs. His secretary, Janet Price, knocked on his door. "Sir, there's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent." Carter looked up to see Counselor Miratel of the Ashanti standing in his doorway. The golden-furred alien looked tired and worried. "Counselor," Carter said, standing up, "this is unexpected. Please, sit down." Miratel took a seat across from his desk. "Ambassador Carter, I need to speak with you about the future of our galaxy." "I'm listening." "The council is falling apart," she said bluntly. 5 more species submitted requests to leave this week. Our military forces are in chaos after what happened to the Vrex fleet. Some council members want to declare war on humanity. Others want to negotiate. Most are just confused and frightened. Carter nodded. "And what do you want, Counselor?" "I want to prevent a galactic war," Miratel replied. "I want to find a way for all of our species to live in peace. But I need your help." Before Carter could answer, his communication device chimed. The message was from Dr. Elena Rodriguez on the archaeology world. It was marked as urgent. "Excuse me, Counselor," Carter said. "I need to take this call." Elena's face appeared on the screen. Her eyes were bright with excitement. "John, you need to see what we found. It changes everything." "What is it, Elena?" "We've translated more of the First Builder records. The catastrophe that destroyed their civilization wasn't natural. It was a war. A war against something they called the Devourers." Carter leaned forward. "What were the Devourers?" "From what we can tell, they were a species that consumed entire worlds. They would strip a planet of all life, then move on to the next one. The First Builders fought them for centuries." "What happened to them?" Elena paused. "The First Builders won, but at a terrible cost. Their civilization was destroyed in the process. The survivors scattered across the galaxy, waiting for the day when their descendants would be strong enough to return." Carter felt a chill run down his spine. "Elena, are you saying that humans are the descendants of the First Builders?" "Yes. But that's not the most important part." Elena's voice became urgent. "John, the Devourers weren't destroyed. They were only driven away. And according to these records, they're coming back." The transmission ended, leaving Carter and Miratel staring at each other in silence. "Did she just say what I think she said?" Miratel asked quietly. Carter nodded slowly. "It appears that our galaxy is about to face an ancient enemy. Nearly destroyed civilization once before. How long do we have?" Carter activated his computer and began calculating based on Elena's data. "If the records are accurate, the Devourers will reach the outer edge of our galaxy in approximately 6 months." Miratel's golden fur stood on end. 6 months? "That's not enough time to prepare." "It is if we work together," Carter said. "All of us. The Alliance, the Council, everyone. The Council will never agree to work with humans. It's too much pride, too much fear." Carter smiled grimly. "Then we'll have to show them that they don't have a choice. Because when the Devourers arrive, it won't matter who was right or wrong in our petty arguments. It will only matter whether we can stand together against the darkness." Outside Liberty Point, ships from dozens of species moved through space. The Independent Systems Alliance was growing stronger every day, but somewhere beyond the edge of known space, something ancient and hungry was also growing stronger. The galaxy was about to discover that some threats were too great for any one species to face alone. The emergency meeting took place aboard the human capital ship Freedom's Dawn. It's a massive vessel that floated in neutral space between Council territory and the Independent Systems Alliance. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the ship's Great Hall, a room large enough to hold 1,000 beings. President Andrew Baker stood at the center of the room. looking out at faces that had been enemies just months before. Council members sat next to Alliance representatives. Rex warriors shared tables with human diplomats. Former enemies were now forced to work together against a threat that could destroy them all. Fellow beings of the galaxy, Baker began, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. 6 months ago, we could not agree on trade routes. Today, we must agree on survival itself. The main screen behind him showed images from the edge of space. Dark shapes moved between the stars, growing larger with each passing day. The Devourers had returned, just as the ancient records predicted. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward to address the assembly. We have learned more about our enemy from the First Builder archives. The Devourers are not like us. They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They consume everything in their path and move on to the next world. A Kalani general raised one of his forearms. How do we fight something like that? The First Builders found a way, Elena replied. But it required every species in the galaxy working together. They called it the Unity Protocol. She pressed a button, and the screen showed ancient star charts covered in symbols and tactical information. The Devourers are powerful, but they have a weakness. They cannot adapt quickly to new strategies. If we can coordinate our attacks perfectly, using the combined strengths of all our species, we can drive them back again. Counselor Zethkar stood up, his massive form casting shadows across the room. And why should we trust you? You walked away from us. You destroyed our authority. Why should we follow human leadership now? Ambassador Carter rose from his seat. Because, Counselor, we are not asking you to follow us. We are asking you to stand beside us. The room fell silent as Carter walked to the center of the hall. The records show that the First Builders were not one species ruling over others. They were a true alliance of equals. Each species contributed their unique strengths to the whole. He gestured to the assembled representatives. The Vrex have the most powerful weapons. The Kalani have the best intelligence networks. The Zintari can calculate battle strategies faster than anyone. The Ashanti understand logistics and supply lines. Every species here has something vital to contribute. And the humans? Zethkar asked, suspicion in his voice. Carter smiled. We have something. The First Builders had. We remember how to bring people together instead of keeping them apart. Counselor Miratel of the Ashanti stood up. The ambassador speaks wisdom. We have spent too long competing with each other. Now we must learn to complement each other. For the next 3 days, the representatives worked to create the new Unity Protocol. It was not easy. Species that had been enemies for centuries had to learn to trust each other. Military officers had to coordinate with beings they had never worked with before. But slowly, a plan emerged. The Vrex would provide the heavy assault. Ships, the Kalani, would handle intelligence and communication. The Zintari would coordinate fleet movements. The Ashanti would manage supplies and logistics. Dozens of other species would contribute their own specialties, and the humans would do what they did best, would hold everyone together. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center of the Freedom's Dawn, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for battle. Over 10,000 ships from more than 50 species moved in perfect formation toward the edge of space. All fleets report ready, her communications officer announced. Kate nodded and opened a channel 2. The entire fleet. This is Admiral Sullivan to all ships. Today we fight not as separate species, but as one galaxy. Today we prove that unity is stronger than any darkness. The battle began at the edge of the Outer Rim, where the first Devourer ships emerged. From deep space were massive black vessels that seemed to absorb light itself. As they moved, nearby asteroids and small moons simply vanished. Consumed by some terrible technology, the first wave of defenders met them head-on. Vrex battleships poured fire into the dark vessels while Kalani fighters darted between them like silver needles. The Zintari provided perfect coordination, allowing different species to work together as if they had trained for years. But the Devourers were as dangerous as the records claimed. Their weapons could destroy entire ships with single shots. Their hulls seemed to repair themselves almost instantly. For every Devourer ship destroyed, 2 more appeared from the darkness. "We're losing ground," reported General Morrison from the tactical station. "They're adapting to our strategies faster than expected." Admiral Sullivan looked at the battle display. The unified fleet was being pushed back despite their superior numbers. Something was wrong. That's when Dr. Rodriguez made a crucial discovery. "Admiral, I've been studying the energy patterns from the Devourer ships. They're not just adapting to our tactics, they're learning from them." "What do you mean?" "Every time we use a strategy, they download the information and share it with their entire fleet instantly." "But there's something else. The energy signatures. They're not entirely alien." Sullivan felt a chill. "Are you saying what I think?" "You're saying some of this technology is based on First Builder designs. The Devourers didn't just fight our ancestors. They stole their knowledge." The battle raged for hours. Ships from dozens of species fought and died together, but they were still being pushed back. It seemed hopeless until Commander Ryan Brooks, watching from his station at Kepler Prime, noticed something important. "Admiral," he called over the communication system, "I think I know what we're missing. Talk to me, Ryan." The First Builders didn't just fight with military technology. Look at the archives. They used everything. Art, music, culture, even philosophy. The Devourers can steal tactical knowledge, but they can't steal the human spirit. Sullivan understood immediately. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan. New orders. Stop fighting like soldiers. Start fighting like the species you are." What happened? Next became legend across the galaxy. The Ashanti began broadcasting their healing songs, somehow disrupting Devourer communications. The Zentari used their mathematical abilities to create impossible attack patterns that confused the enemies. Learning systems. The Vrex fought with the fury of their warrior ancestors, using tactics so old that no computer could predict them. And the humans did what they had always done best. They inspired others to be better than they thought possible. Captain Steve Parker led a desperate charge against the largest Devourer ship. As his small fleet attacked, he opened all communication channels. "For everyone who dreams of tomorrow," he called out. "For every world that wants to be free." His words were translated into dozens of languages and broadcast across the fleet. Suddenly, every ship was fighting not just for survival, but for the right to exist as free beings. The tide of battle turned. The Devourers, for all their stolen technology, could not understand or counter the power of inspiration. They could copy tactics, but they could not copy hope. One by one, the dark ships began to retreat. They pulled back toward the edge of space. Their mission of consumption interrupted by something they had never encountered before. Unity born not from fear, but from choice. As the last Devourer ship disappeared into the darkness between galaxies, a cheer went up from the combined fleet. Ships from species that had been enemies just months before celebrated together. President Baker stood on the bridge of the Freedom's Dawn watching the celebration. Ambassador Carter joined him at the observation window. "So what happens now?" Carter asked. Baker smiled. "Now we build something new. The council is finished, but that's not a bad thing. What we have now is better. A real alliance of free species working together because they choose to, not because they're forced to. If the Devourers come back, then we'll be ready." Baker replied, "All of us together." 6 months later, the Independent Systems Alliance had grown to include over 200 species. The old council had dissolved, replaced by a democratic federation where every world had a voice. Humanity had come to the galaxy seeking partnership. They had found something better. They had found family, and somewhere in the depths of space. Ancient automated systems recorded a simple message in the language of the First Builders. "The children have come home. The galaxy is safe."